So today I want to talk to you about legacy. And the title of my lesson is A Leader's Lasting Value is Measured by Succession. I think that the best thing that a leader can leave people is a legacy. Other people to fulfill the vision and to live out the values that founder has started with. I can still remember in America, in the States, there was a coach that was extremely well known by the name of John Wooden. He coached at the University of UCLA, a basketball coach. In fact, he was voted the greatest coach of the last century. He was just a tremendous man, a tremendous teacher, and he was my mentor for many, many years. And I can remember he was in probably about 93, 94. He lived to be 99. In fact, the last thing that he did before he passed away is he wrote the foreword to my book, Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. And so I was with Coach. I had him at a conference I was hosting. A couple thousand people were in the audience. And I asked him the question, I said, Coach Wooden, when we're talking about his legacy, what do you want to be known for when you leave this world? And it was very interesting because his basketball teams won 10 national championships. To this day, he has had the most successful basketball teams ever in college basketball. So when I asked him what he wanted to be remembered for, I think all of us assumed he'd say, well, I did coach 10 different teams to national championships in America. And so when I asked him that question, very quickly he said, well, I can tell you what I don't want to be known for. He said, I don't want to be known for winning all the national championships that we've won. And there was an audible gasp in the entire crowd as they went, it was kind of like, we thought for sure that would be what he wanted his legacy to be. And then this incredible teacher, wise man said, I want to be known by my players as a coach that helped them prepare for life and that they did life better, not just basketball, but they did life better because of me. And he talked about just the values that he'd lived, that he'd wanted to pass on to them. And that was a very important day for me because as I listened to him, I thought to myself, a legacy has to be more than just something that I leave with people. It's something that I give people, that I put within them. It's almost like I didn't just give you this bottle of water. That's my legacy, but I poured into you something that made you a better person. And then I was privileged also to be mentored by Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, up into the 90s, was known as the number one management guru in the world. And I remember after one of my 3-day sessions with a group of about 20 of us, we were wrapping it up, and I remember him looking at us and saying, now, leaders, remember there is no success without a successor. And the most important thing you can do is leave a legacy. And I can still remember my conversation with Jack Welch, who's a neighbor of mine here in Florida before he passed away, who was probably recognized when he was the CEO of General Electric as the greatest CEO of that day. And I remember him looking and saying to me, John, don't put your legacy in organizations, put your legacy in people. And it was from him that I got the term, I want to have legs, from my legacy. The legs are people and the legs move, and that's what I want to do. Because I'm a person of faith, I'm going to do something I usually don't do in these teachings. In fact, I put it in just for you. But I want to give you legacy awareness for just a second. And there are just three things I want to read to you. The first thing I want you to know is that you have a destiny to fulfill. Psalm 139:16. Like an open book, you watched me grow from conception to birth. All the stages of my life were spread out before you, the days of my life all prepared before I had even lived one day. Wow. You have a destiny to fulfill. Secondly, you have a contribution to make. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. Each person is given something to do that shows who God is. And everyone gets in on it and everyone benefits. And thirdly, you have a legacy to leave. 2 Timothy 2:2, and the instructions that you heard from me along with my witnesses, transmit and entrust them as a deposit to reliable and faithful people who will be competent and qualified to reach others. So what I want you to understand in the faith perspective, of God's perspective, you have a destiny to fulfill, you have a contribution to make, and you have a legacy to leave. So let's talk about it. How do we develop a legacy culture? Culture is all about behavior. Vision is what we see, but culture is what we do. So how do you and I develop in our company, in our organization, on our team? How do we develop a legacy culture? To teach this, I'm going to share with you 3 pictures, okay? And these 3 pictures will just visually help you understand what is needed in your life to have the legacy culture that you want to leave. And the first picture is the picture of a clock. And the clock, as I look at it, asks me a question, and that question it asks me is, what are you doing? You see, we look at a clock dozens of times every day. And the reason we do that is because we have a schedule to fulfill, and we got appointments to make and people to see. And so that clock kind of keeps us doing the everyday essentials. I mean, okay, at this time I need to be there to meet with them, and I need to write this afternoon at 2:00. And it keeps us on schedule. The clock is a reminder that we don't want to let this day pass without making it a worthwhile day, and we want to prioritize our time. So when you see the picture of the clock and legacy, it's really talking about now, today. And I know we think of legacy as the future, tomorrow, but for right now, just let's stay right in the present. What am I doing right now, at this moment, to increase the legacy that I hope to have in my world? As you know, I teach the Power of 5, which is all about everyday essentials. And the Power of 5 basically is told in the story that if you have a tree in your backyard and you want to cut it down, and if you have an axe and you go to that tree and you just swing 5 times every day, eventually that tree is going to fall. Now, that little simple story is just a beautiful example of what I call the everyday essentials. And so when people say, I want to make my day count, I've got this clock that's reminded me that today matters. I want to make my day count. I look at them and I say, okay, let's go to the story of the tree. You see, the everyday essentials in that little story that I briefly gave you in 60 seconds was, number 1, you need to know what you want to accomplish. In this story, I want to cut down a tree. The second thing you need to know is you need to have the right tool. What did I do every day? I went to my garage. I went to my place where I have my tools, and I get an axe. And that's the right tool. It's sharp. It cuts wood. And I go over to that tree and I swing 5 times every day. I know what I want to accomplish. I have the right tool. Thirdly, I have to take action. Just because I have an axe and just because I know that I want to cut a tree down, that doesn't mean the tree's coming down. You see, I have to take action. I have to every day go out, pick up the axe, go to that tree, have to take action, have to swing 5 times. You can never take success and separate it from action. Action is the key to your success. It's not good intentions that makes you successful at all. In fact, I know people that have great intentions and they're not at all successful. You have to take those good intentions and turn them into good actions. And so that's why what in the story, what did they? That 5 times, there's action. That just 5 times every day, you're whacking a little bit of that wood out of there. So you have to know what you want to accomplish. You have to have the right tool. You have to take action. Number 4, you have to stay focused. I mean, what would happen is I went and picked up my axe, and on my way to the tree I wanted to cut down, I saw another tree, and I thought, you know what? I think I'll cut that down too. And so instead of going to the tree I started with, I'm over here and I'm doing 5 swings at that tree. And now you can tell we got a problem. And I didn't stay focused. And maybe the next day I say, well, there's a tree over here I need to do that with. And so I go hack away at it 5 times. Well, eventually I'm not going to cut any trees down. I'm just going to have half a dozen trees that are scarred. It's because I didn't stay focused. What you focus on expands. So that clock, that picture of legacy is saying to me, John, you got to do the everyday essentials. Today matters. So back to the story. I know what I want to accomplish, want to cut the tree down, got to have the right tool, got an axe, got to take action, just get over there and swing. We don't have to swing at the tree all day. We just do 5 swings every day, but a little bit of action every day. Number 4, we have to stay focused. And now the 5th everyday essential is I have to be consistent. In the story, what word did you keep hearing? You kept hearing every day, every day, every day, every day. You see, today matters. And life consists of a lot of everydays doing the right thing. This is huge. Consistency is so underrated. And the reason I think that it's not appreciated and underrated so much is it takes so long. I mean, no one ever went to work for 1 week and showed up every day. And at the end of Friday, somebody came up and said, hey, we have a consistency award we want to give you. You came to work for 5 straight days. You're amazing. No. You see, consistency is only ever rewarded on the back end. But when you think of your legacy, you've got to think of today, right now, because today matters. We have a tendency to over-exaggerate what we did yesterday. We have a tendency to overestimate what we can do tomorrow. And here's the challenge. We have also a problem of underestimating what we can accomplish right now. So if you want to have a great legacy tomorrow, you got to show up today. And today you have to be doing the everyday essentials. Every day you do those things. It's like me writing a book. People say, John, how have you written 85, 86 books? Well, I have my 5 things, my everyday essentials. Every day I read, every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions, every day I write. Every day. Every day. And people say, well, John, when you say every day, what do you mean by every day? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I mean every day. Every day. I write every day. You say, John, when you're on vacation, every day when I'm on vacation, I write. Hey, how about Christmas? I write on every Christmas day. And now listen to me carefully. I haven't said I write all day. I said I write every day. Consistency always trumps intensity. Never forget this. I know a whole bunch of people, they'll get intense and they'll just work hard for 4 or 5 days, 10, 12 hours a day, boy, and then they quit. They'd have been much better to just take that axe and 5 times, chop away at that, just every day, every day. So what you need to do is you need to have these everyday essentials. You need to have this clock that reminds you that legacy is built one day at a time. One day. So don't despise the day. Utilize that day. Well, let me give you another picture that really helps you with legacy, helps me at least. The second picture is a picture of a compass. Now, when you have the clock and you have that picture, the clock basically says, what are you doing now? But when you have a compass, The question the compass asks is, where are you going? Because when you think of a compass, people have, why do they have a compass? For direction, to know exactly which path that they should take. When it comes to legacy, the statement is that people will describe your life in one sentence. And then, since people are going to describe your life in one sentence, pick it now. You see, what's amazing, when I see that compass, it reminds me that I need to be going in the right direction. And what I need to do is I need to be picking now what I want to have people say, at my memorial service. You don't want to die and then have people show up and they're trying to guess what you accomplished in your life. For me, my compass, my mission, my path that I take basically can be summed up in one sentence, and that is I want to add value to leaders who multiply value to others. That's who I am. That's what I do. That's what I'm committed. That's me. Wow. I think it's very essential for you and me to have what I call, or what Simon Sinek calls, I love that. He said, everybody needs to have a just cause. And a just cause it's about the future. It's about the future. And it's about who you are. It's the compass that, this is where I'm going with my life. I committed my life to teach values because I believe that it's values that brings transformation to people's lives. And so I wrote a book called Change Your World, and it's all about how do I take good values and around a table share and relate and connect with and add value to people to become people of values. You see, a just cause. Simon Sinek talks about that in his wonderful book, The Infinite Game. And a just cause stands for something. It's a positive just cause. It's affirmative and optimistic. What I've discovered is if you're mad at something and you don't like something, that anger gives you great passion, but that passion doesn't last. People that have a negative reason for their cause or passion seldom stay in the game very long because it emotionally wears them down. So a just cause is something that I just absolutely believe in that's got a sense of positivity to it. A just cause must be inclusive. It must be open to everybody. In fact, when we talk about our John Maxwell team and becoming a Maxwell certified leader, my gosh, we say we want you all to come. We want the diversity. We want different people. We want you to fill in the gaps and make a difference and complete us and complement us. A just cause is service oriented. It's always for the benefit of someone else. You see, there's a difference between me wanting something from you and me wanting something for you. And when you live a just cause, you want something for people. I think that, again, is what's made our John Maxwell company so successful. Because when I started it, I was asked, well, are you willing to give this your name? And I hesitated for a few weeks because I thought, I've worked hard on building my name. Good Lord. What happens if I give my name to somebody that just foolishly doesn't live my values? And I had to really think that through. But I gave my name for this cause because this cause is service oriented. It's to help people, to add value to people. I said, I want my name to be connected with people, to really make a difference with people. A just cause is resilient. It will literally endure all the political, cultural, technological changes in a culture. It really will. And it's idealistic. It's big, it's bold. To be honest with you, it's beautiful. It's big, bold, beautiful, and usually not even achievable. But that's okay because the cause, the mission, the purpose is worth what we're doing. So I've given you two pictures of legacy. One is a clock. What are we doing right now? One is a compass. Where are we going? And the third one is companions. Who's going with us? In other words, when I take this journey, Who am I going to take with me on this? This is huge. This is huge. I can remember under President George W. Bush's administration, they asked me to go spend a day with the CIA. And they wanted me to talk to their top, I don't know, maybe 600-700 leaders about leadership and really kind of get them on the same page. And they kind of wanted to, I don't know, I think they wanted me just to come in and give the leaders of the CIA some purpose and some motivation. So I went there. That was a very interesting experience. I mean, when you come to the gate, they take everything from you. You carry nothing on the inside. The lesson I have, it's got to be memorized. I mean, no phone, nothing. So I sat down with lunch, and in the CIA, there are 3 different divisions. And they all operate under the CIA umbrella, but there are 3 almost different organizations within the CIA. And so I'm having lunch with about 20 of them, and they are the leaders of those 3 divisions. And so we're having a lunch, and I can sense tension in the room. And I thought, wow, this isn't flowing really well. The people seem to be a little awkward with each other. By the time the dinner or the lunch was over, I came to the conclusion that they probably didn't like each other. In fact, I was bold enough that I finally looked at the 3 main leaders of the 3 divisions. I said, "How often do you get together?" And they say, "Seldom. We haven't been together for months until today." And I looked at them and I thought, well, how are you going to build a great organization if you aren't spending time together? And then I finally just asked, do you like each other? Now, that was a stupid question I asked. I mean, this is the CIA. All of a sudden, I could see them just say, "Come with us, son." And they'd taken me out in the back and putting a blindfold on me, and you never know where I went. You just say, John disappeared. I thought, why am I asking them, do they like each other? But to make the bottom line is, they didn't like each other. And now they're wanting me to teach them how to do well together. That's not possible. So when you're thinking of legacy, you got to think of companions. I mean, who do I want to go with me? Who do I want to take the trip with me? In my book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, I talk about the law of the inner circle. Those closest to that leader, what do? They determine the level of that leader's success. Wow. And so therefore, I developed a list of questions that I ask the people that are going to take the legacy trip with me, my inner circle. Questions such as, do they live out good values? Are their values kind of like mine? I always want to do a values test. I'm looking for values compatibility. Another question is, the people that I'm bringing on my team as in my inner circle, do they have high influence with other people? In other words, if I bring them on, I want them to be able to influence other people so that we can lead well together. Another question I ask is, do they have do they have high giftedness? Are they gifted well in the areas, especially that would complete me or complement me? In other words, do they have gifts that I don't have? Can they lead well? Can they equip other people? These are just, another question I ask is, are they just a good fit? In fact, I have my inner circle members go do something socially, individually with somebody that we're thinking about it and then they come back and say, did you like them? I don't mean it's wrong if I'm 75. Do you think I just want to take a trip? I mean, at my age with people that I don't like or that don't have my values. So that companion's question is it's just really, really important. Wow. So as I wrap up my teaching session on legacy, I just want you to know that you should be preparing to hand that baton off to someone else. And by the way, you hand the baton off at full speed. Don't wait till you're old and you're no longer running fast and you're kind of staggering over there giving that baton, because anybody knows in a relay race, the only team that's going to win are when all of the runners pass the baton off at peak speed. That's really, really essential. So just think of the 3 pictures. And as you think of those three pictures, just simply say, hey, do I have a clock in my life that just keeps me focused on the everyday essentials, which will compound each day into something big? That's important. And by the way, do I have a do I have a compass that's going to make sure that my direction is right? And then how about my companions? Are there people that I love? Are they people that I care for? Are they people that, wow, I look up every morning and say, hey, we get to take the journey together. I close with saying that I, for years, have taught and trained leaders because I believe everything rises and falls on leadership. And when leadership rises, when leadership does well, it does well because the leaders have good leadership skills and they have good values. And by the way, when it falls and goes down, it's because the leaders have poor leadership skills and pretty poor values also. So as you're thinking of a legacy, just, hey, keep that clock, keep that compass, keep those companions, just keep them in front of you. And visually every day ask yourself, what am I doing today that's essential, that's going to give a great return someday? I got to keep watching the clock and, where am I going? And activity is not necessarily accomplishment. Let me look at my compass. Got to make sure I'm going in the right direction. And then, wow, who's going with me? Who are my companions going to be? If you ask those three questions and you keep those three pictures, I promise you are going to develop a legacy that people are going to want to pick up on, follow, and help you fulfill. I want to talk to you about values, and I want to talk to you about legacy. Let me just share with you in the beginning that I am committed to transformation of lives through good values. You see, I've discovered that if people begin to learn good values and they begin to live those values out, honestly, they become more valuable to themselves and they become more valuable to others. I learned that because in 1992, I was writing for Time Warner, and this was the time when corporate America was just sowing bad seeds of distrust. And if you'll remember back then, you that would be old enough, Enron and some of the companies were just not doing very well. In fact, on Time magazine, they said, I think it was 1992, was the summer of distrust. And Time Warner, the publishing company, wanted me to write a book on business ethics. And I shared with them that I couldn't do that. And they asked why. I said, there's no such thing as business ethics. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, there's just ethics. You see, if you have ethics, they work in your business, and they work in your family, and they work in life. There's no such thing as compartmentalizing ethics or any other value. It has to be integrated into our life. And that's one of the things I love about what you're doing. You're integrating values in the lives of other people. Well, I did write that book, and I based it on the Golden Rule. And I based it on the Golden Rule because that's accepted in every religion and every culture in the world. Do unto others, treat others as you want to be treated. But that was life-changing for me because all of a sudden, when we began to teach this value, I began to see the change that it brought in people's lives. And so I began to be committed to teaching values. Now, I have a nonprofit organization, Equip, that's trained 5 million leaders in every country of the world. And after training all of those leaders in a 19-year period, I said, let's now take them from trained leaders to transformational leaders. And how do you produce a transformational leader? By teaching them, having them learn and live out good values. We've been doing that now for the last 9 years. We literally go into different countries. We started with the country of Guatemala, then Paraguay, and then Costa Rica. We're ready to go into 2 other countries. And when I say we go into countries, what we do is we come in only by the invitation of the president of the country, and then we go to the 8 streams of influence, where the influence factor goes through the culture, government, business, religion, media, arts, health, sports, the major influencers. And we get buy-in from the top of those leaders to teach values in small tables, round tables. We call them transformational tables. Tables like this, where you get just a few people around the table and you begin to teach good values to people. We have found it to be absolutely life-changing. In fact, we have 22 countries in the world right now where the leaders of the country, presidents or prime ministers, have said, John, please come in and talk to us about your values. Now, I say all that because, again, I know who you are, and I know that Life Project is based on values and legacy and pouring into one generation that can pass on to the next generation life-changing values. So now, if you will allow me, I'm going to get really personal. And what I mean by that is my father passed away on July 4th. He was 98 and a half years of age, and he was my lifetime mentor. He's the greatest person that I've ever known. And he has left within me not only great values, but he's left within me an incredible legacy. A couple of days before he passed away, I spent time with him, just the two of us. And as he laid in bed, he was unable to respond by this time as he was nearing death. I shared with him, I put on my iPhone, by the way, on my iPhone, I've got a salt shaker and a light bulb, salt and light. Jesus said that we were to be salt and light. Salt makes things better and light makes things brighter. And that's what we do, make things better and brighter for people. So on my iPhone, on July 1st, a few days before my dad passed away, I wrote these words, "Thanks, Dad, I learned these lessons from you." And I thought because you are so involved in legacy and values that I would just pass on. I have 29 of them, by the way. But what I would do is I would write a lesson on my iPhone that my father taught me, and then I would stand up and I would stand beside him and put my hand on his shoulder, and I would read the lesson he taught me, and then I would talk about it. And he not only taught me these lessons, he showed me those lessons. He was a show and tell person. He knew that you back up your words with your actions. And again, that's how values are transferred. In fact, I make a statement in mentoring that I want to stop here now and just share with you because it's a very important statement. And the statement is this: who mentors you is as important as what they say. Obviously, what they say gives you insight and information and knowledge and wisdom, but the contagiousness of the spirit of mentoring is based on who mentors you. And I have just discovered that spirit is contagious. And as you are teaching values and leaving a legacy for the next generation, who you are is as important as what you say. You can't not separate the two of them. So, if you would allow me just, for a few minutes today, I would just like to share with you some of the lessons that my father taught me. Lessons that have been life-changing to me, and maybe they'll help you. I hope so. For example, my father taught me how to add value to people. I don't know of anyone that loved people and added value to people more than my dad. I watched him. I watched him care for people, encourage people, lift people, believe in people. In fact, when I graduated from college, as I was getting ready to go into the ministry, I asked my dad to give me some advice. I said, "Dad, help me to get started well." And the advice that he gave me that day was life-changing and has stayed with me throughout all of my years of life and ministry. He said, "John, if you really want to be successful, if you really want to help people, and you really want to make a difference," he said, "do 3 things every day." He said, value people, believe in people, and unconditionally love people. He said, if you'll do those three things, people will be drawn to you. And he taught me that day that when you increase people's lives, they're drawn to you. If you decrease their lives, they fall away from you. And he said, when you value people, believe in people, and unconditionally love them, he said, what you're doing is increasing their lives, and they'll be drawn to you. And he said, you'll always have crowds to preach to. You'll always have people to read your books. He said, just trust me, value people, believe in people, and unconditionally love them. That has been my personal grid in everything I do. When I write books, I do that with those three thoughts. When I speak, I do that with those three thoughts. When I lead, I do that with those three thoughts. You see, it was my father who just taught me to add value to people. Every day, there are 5 things that I do. And the 5 things that I'm going to share with you right now, truly, tangibly, definitely add value to others. Let me give them to you. Every day, I value people. What that means is that I look at every person and I place great value in that person. And people will say to me sometimes, well, John, you speak to the masses and you tell everybody you value them, but you don't really know those people. How can you value someone you don't know? And I said, well, that's true. I don't know the person, but I know the creator of that person. God created you in His image, after His likeness. Let me tell you something. The fact that God created you tells you how much He values you. And if God would value you enough to create you and give you a purpose in life, then by all means, I'm going to value you because of who He is and what He's done for you. Now, valuing people is very important, and here's why. If I value you as a person, then I'll look for ways to add value to you. The opposite's also true. If I don't value you as a person, I won't look for ways to add value to you. You see, how I value you is how I view you. And so, I tell leaders all the time, if you ever stop loving your people, stop leading your people. Why? Because when we don't value the people that we lead, we manipulate them. That's always wrong. Manipulating people is to move people for personal advantage. That's never right. And so valuing people is core. It's center to every person adding value to others. I add value to you because I value you. It's just that simple. So every day, I value you. In fact, that's why I'm here with Pastor Jose today. That's why I'm talking with you at Life Project, because I value you. Number 2, every day. Remember, I do these things every day. 1, every day I value people. 2, every day I think of ways of adding value to you. In other words, before I'm with you, I know that I'm going to be meeting you. I look on my schedule every day and I say, okay, well, I'm going to be with Life Project today. And so how can I add value to you? I think about adding value to you before I'm with you. This is very important. It sets me up to do the best to serve and add value to you. I can think of my grandchildren. When a few years ago I was writing a book called Intentional Living, and I was teaching them how to live intentionally, because that's so huge. The most overrated words in the English language are good intentions. Good intentions have never done anything. Nobody's life has ever been changed through good intentions. Their life is changed through good actions. And intentional living is the bridge that takes us from intentions to action. And so I was having dinner with my grandchildren, and I was talking to them about how are you going to add value? How are you intentionally going to do this the next day when you go to school? And my youngest grandchild, James, who was 9 at the time, said, Papa, tomorrow when I go to school, I'm going to open doors for people all day long. I'm going to be a door opener. And he said, I'm not only going to open up doors, he said, Papa, I tell you what else I'm going to do. I want to smile and I'm going to say, have a good day. So the next evening he called me on the phone. He said, Papa, I had a great day. I said, tell me about it, James. He said, I opened doors for 47 people today. 47 people. He opened doors for them. And he said, I not only opened doors for them, I smiled and I said, have a good day. Have a good day. Now, he's 9 years old. He's already understanding how to add value to people. But why did he open that many doors? Why did he smile and say, have a good day? Because he thought ahead of how he was going to add value to people. That is essential. That is key. Don't miss this. This is so important. Every day I value people. Every day I think of ways to add value to people. Thirdly, every day I look for ways to add value to people. Yes, I look for ways. Look for ways to add value to you. Now, this is important. We see things not as they are. We see things as we are. So if I'm a person that looks for ways to add value to people, guess what I'll see? Ways to add value to people. Just as if I'm a person that has no desire to add value to you at all, I won't see ways to add value to you. You see, I see what I'm prepared to see. I see what I am. That's why two people can be with you all day, and one person adds value to you. They're a plus in your life, and the other one's a minus. One is looking for ways to add value to people. And by the way, in the area of values and relationships, let me just say this because it's very essential. Every one of us, we're either a plus in people's lives or we're a minus. We're either adding value to people, or to be honest with you, we're kind of probably taking value away from people. So every day, I value people. Think of ways to add value to people. I look for ways to add value to people. Number 4, I do things that add value to you. You see, I become a person of action. It's wonderful to value people. It's wonderful to think of ways and look for ways to add value to people. But the bottom line is, did I do it? Did I do it? My dad used to tell me the parable of the frogs, where he'd say, John, 5 frogs were on a log. 4 decided to jump off. How many frogs are left? I'd say 1. He'd say, no, 5. Well, that made no sense at all. I'd say, Dad, you said there were 5 frogs on a log, but 4 decided to jump off. Well, if 4 decided to jump off, there's only 1 left. He said, no, just because you decide to jump doesn't mean that you did. You see, it's the action that makes the change. So every morning, I look at my schedule. I did this morning. I looked at my schedule. I knew I would be in the studio teaching, and I saw that I would be with Pastor Jose and Life Project, and I asked myself a very simple question. How do I add value to you? To you. So in the morning, I look about where I'm going to see and who I'm going to see and when I'm going to see them, and I say, how can I specifically add value to those people? Every evening, I review my day, and I ask, who did I add value to today? And how did I add value to them? I think this is essential. Every day, I value people, think of ways to add value to people, look for ways to add value to people, do things that add value to people. And number 5, every day, I encourage others to add value to people. That's why we're together right now. I have the opportunity to talk to you about values and legacy. But the success of this talk is not what I'm sharing with you. The success of the talk is what you do with what I'm sharing. You taking what I give you and saying, I'm going to do that in my life. I'm going to apply that to my life. You see, all transformation has at its roots application. Our lives aren't changed until we take the action to change those lives. So when we think of Life Project and the heart of Pastor Jose and what he's wanting to accomplish and the good things that you are accomplishing, I congratulate you for those. I just want you to know that values and legacy are essential. And as I look at my list of 29 things that my father taught me, I can tell you without any question, these are values that are now my legacy. I have time. Let me give you, I don't know, maybe another one or two. My father, another lesson that he taught and lived in front of me, was to travel the high road. Now, when we talk about traveling the high road, we're talking about more than the golden rule. You know, the golden rule says, treat others in the way that you want to be treated. That's a good rule. That's a great value. But when you travel the high road, I would say that's not the golden rule. I'd say that's the platinum rule. It's a little higher even than treating others as you want to be treated. The platinum rule basically says, treat others better than you want to be treated. In other words, go the extra mile, turn the extra cheek. This is a major teaching. You see, my father said, take the high road. He also said, not only travel high, but travel far. There's in the Bible, there's the second mile teaching. You know, if somebody asked you to go in Bible times to walk a mile with them, you were obligated as a fellow citizen to do that. But after the mile was over, you weren't obligated to go the second mile. And Jesus said, go the second mile. In other words, do something that's beyond the law or obligation. Give a little extra effort, a little extra care, a little extra time. So my dad, he said, John, walk the second mile, travel far, take the high road, travel high. And the high road is that platinum rule: treat others better than they treat you. I saw my father do that. My father was the president of a college, and he had about 3 board members that were, they just gave him a difficult time. In fact, I was in college, and I could tell that board meetings sometimes became very difficult because these 3 board members were pretty negative and quite jealous. In fact, 2 of them kind of wanted his job, and so it was a kind of a contentious board. It wasn't one that was building. It was kind of one that was pulling apart. And there were times when they just kind of abused my dad. Just instead of taking high road with him, they took the low road. And I watched my father turn the other cheek. I watched my father smile. I watched my father live above all the pettiness of those board members. Now, as a college kid, it really made me mad. In fact, I wanted to go in and set them straight. But my father, wise, filled with the Spirit, filled with the fruit of the Spirit, love, peace, joy, long-suffering, he took the high road. My mom was the librarian at the college, and so I would have a key, and I would sneak in late at night when the library, quote, was closed, and a lot of times I would study. One night I was in the library over in the corner studying, and my father came into the library. He didn't know I was there at all, and he kind of went over very close to where I was quietly kind of hidden, sitting. And he began to pray for the board members. He began to pray for those that had taken advantage of him and just had, quote, done him wrong. And I listened to him as he prayed and asked God to love them and forgive them and asked God to give him a love for them and asked God to help him to take high road. He finished that prayer and he walked out of the library and he didn't know I was there. In fact, it was several years before I ever told him this story. But that night marked my life because I watched my father treat others better than he was treated. I watched my father turn the other cheek. I watched him live out this value. Today, it's ingrained in me. Not because I'm naturally a good person. It's ingrained in me because I saw it in my father. And again, as I think of Life Project and Pastor Jose, I think about values and legacy and things that are important to you. I would just say again to all of you, as you're in this wonderful mission of life, I want to encourage you to understand that what you do is so much more powerful than what you say. In fact, I tell people constantly, what you say is a statement, but what you do underlines that statement.
Let's talk a little bit about, just give me some content from this book, Teammate. This is the book, again, it'll be in your show notes, but this is the book you did with David Ross. And tell me, what does every leader need?
Well, I will tell you, the fascinating thing about this book was that so David Ross, ironically, I live in Tallahassee, Florida, as you noted, and David Ross also lives in Tallahassee, Florida, right? Randomly, one day, he and I are on an airplane together, and David says, you know, you've written a book with Walter Payton, which I did. I lived with Walter for the last few weeks of his life and wrote his autobiography. He says, you've written a book with Michael Jordan, which I did during Make-A-Wish. He said, you know, you need the next great Chicago athlete. And I said, David, here's the problem. You're a backup catcher for the Chicago Cubs, the worst team in the history of baseball. Why would I do a book with the backup catcher from the Cubs? And he says, you don't know my story. He said, let me tell you. And what I grew to understand, and the reason we did the book, which we started the year before the Cubs won the World Series. Talk about random, right? No one believed the Cubs could win a World Series. But the story was that David had lost his career halfway through. He was 8 years in, and he got cut from a team in Cincinnati because he was a bad teammate, because he wasn't someone who made other people better. And wow. in that experience, one of the things that he learned was that if he could learn how to make other people better, if he could be a great teammate, he might have a greater future in the game of baseball. He actually committed himself to that. He went to Atlanta, to the Braves, opened up the whiteboard, started pulling everybody in who came through the locker room and asked them, tell me about the greatest teammate you ever had. Give me 3 words to describe that teammate. And he built himself a list of what it meant to become a great teammate. And every day before he took the field, he checked the boxes to say, I'm going to be a teammate that will make others better, whether I play or not. Wow. And what he learned was that you can be invaluable without ever being most valuable. You can become invaluable in your organization without ever being the best in your team. And it's funny, I was talking to John one day at breakfast up in Washington, D.C., and he asked me what I was working on, and I was working on this book, and I used that phrase, invaluable without ever being most valuable. And John Maxwell, that guy's a master learner. He stopped me. He pulls out his iPad, and he's like, and I said, what are you doing? He goes, that's a line I'm using in the future. Right? And he goes, I don't care if you use it in your book or not, but I'm using that line because John's such a veteran learner. But the idea is that David would teach us that we can become special in any organization that we choose to join if we elect to make other people better. He built a list, made that his checklist every day. And over the course of the next several years, he didn't just become a great teammate. He became one of the most valuable players in baseball. Other teams wanted him because he wasn't a great player, but he made the locker room better. He made the environment better. And as a result, he ended up getting the chance to win 2 World Series, one in Boston and one here. And when the 7th game of the World Series was played here in Cleveland, and the Cubs won that series, the game ended, and the player that the other players carried off the field on their shoulder was a backup catcher named David Ross, because he made other people better.
Mic drop, but we're not ending the podcast, so don't go there. But Don, in this room and podcast family, I wish you could be in the room with us in Chicago, but the number of most valuable players, people that are the most valuable to the team that's even in this room. This is why we're doing this city tour. And our podcast family, you've had to listen to us talk about these city tours and feel like you're missing out. But I got to meet just a few moments ago before we started recording some of the people that have truly given me energy to do what I do on difficult travel seasons and difficult seasons and I just want to come down there and carry you off the field on my shoulders.
And when he does, let's film it.
Yeah, let's film it.
Let's get some video.
I might not take you far, but at least it'd be good. Hey, let's talk a little bit more about David Ross. So in your opinion, what was the leadership quality that David possessed so well throughout his journey that you highlighted in the book?
I think the thing that he was just a learner, right? You know, he was willing to admit, think about it, you get fired because you're a bad teammate, which he did. And instead of saying, well, it's the coach's, it's the manager's fault, it's someone else's fault, he actually owned it. He said, you know what? If I'm going to repair myself from this moment, it's going to be on me. And so he took ownership of where he was and what he was doing wrong to make a better future for himself. And as a result, as I said, got to win 2 World Series, right? We actually had him at Exchange several years ago. And it's funny because he shows up and John wanted to see a World Series ring, and David just had a couple of them in his backpack, you know, just travel with a couple of World Series rings. But he knew that he couldn't blame others for his failings. He needed to own them, and he needed to repair himself, and he set out to do it by learning from other people. And the ability to ask great questions, to take the answers and improve yourself. I mean, that's what this room is all about. That's what the Maxwell Leadership family is all about. It is doing exactly that.
Well, and I'm going to come back and ask you a follow-up question on it, but I get asked a lot, traveling the world, saying, okay, what do you look for in a leader? What is it that you admire the most, or what quality do you try to unearth in the interview process? And it's exactly what you're saying. How coachable are they? How much are they willing to learn? I ask this question all the time, podcast family. When is the last time you learned something for the first time? And what was it? And I'll sit in an interview and I'll say, when was the last time you learned something for the first time? And what was it? Now, I used to say, when was the last time you learned something for the first time? They'd catch on. They go, yesterday. But when I said, and what was it? There's this pause, because it's so hard for a leader at the top of her or his game to take time to learn something else. Why do you think it's so hard for leaders how come leaders struggle so much to have this posture of learning?
Because I think there's a sense that if I'm in a learning posture, it's because I have a weakness, right? I have a hole that I need to fill. And most of us don't want to acknowledge the hole, right? Most of us want to believe we are whole. And the truth is that all of us, there's a reason they're called blind spots, right? All of us have them, and each of us need to seek someone. And sometimes it takes a traumatic moment, like losing your job, as David did, to realize the hole and the need and to go fill it.
Yeah, I so agree with that. All right, so you've interviewed countless other successful leaders. You talked a little bit before we started recording about some of the athletes that you have been able to interview and highlight in your career. Maybe you won't even tell a couple of those stories, but what are the common traits or the common practices that you've observed in some of these incredible high-performing individuals?
Probably the number one trait that really it would surprise people is that the better they are, the more humble they are. The better they are, the more they realize, the more self-aware they are, and the ability to want to try to continue to grow. We were talking about it before we got started here, that we're sitting here at Willow Creek, and just literally less than 5 miles away, maybe one of the big moments in my career occurred when a gentleman by the name of Walter Payton Walter was the greatest running back and the greatest football player in the history. Sorry for the Green Bay Packer fans that are in here, but greatest football player in the history of the game. Walter was 46 years old, had developed a cancer that was inoperable. He knew it, the world did not, and he called and asked me if I would live with him for the last few weeks of his life to tell his story in a book that we wrote together.
You see how nonchalant he says that? He called me and asked me to live with him for a few weeks.
Well,
some people, favor's not fair.
I didn't deserve it, right? Favor isn't always deserved either, right? And but Walter gave me this opportunity, and it was game-changing for me, because from that moment on, many other people who were very successful in the world believed that if Walter Payton would trust you, I can trust you too. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes in life, someone gives you a break, someone gives you a chance, and my chance happened not very far from here. Which is why when Mark said, which one of these cities do you want to go to? No offense to all the other cities, but I wanted to come home to Chicago. This is it. You called it early.
I'm sorry.
You called
Atlanta,
it early.
Houston, and Florida. We love you. We love you. Hey, so let's go into this just a little bit more on these high performers. I want to extrapolate out from your experience. I watched something the other day. I need to send this to you. I watched something about a week and a half ago. I was in Romania, and somebody sent me a video of an interview with Kobe Bryant. You may have seen it. And it was 9.5 minutes of brilliance. 9.5 minutes of brilliance. But one of the questions was, what did it feel like when you lost? Without blinking an eye, he said, it excited me. He said, because much of my life, I was one of the top performers. And when I found a game, a person, or an environment that I couldn't beat, it meant that I had more ahead of me that I could win and that I could accomplish. He said, losing was exciting. Isn't that brilliant?
It is brilliant, and it's impossible. Most of us mere humans, right, struggle, when we think of how to handle those moments. Right now we're actually doing a book club with the Maxwell team, right?
Yeah.
Some of you are on it, awesome. And it's based on a book that I did in which I over the course of a career, I've asked 2,500 times some of the greatest champions of our lifetime, if you could name for me the habit that you believe you developed into your daily routine that most changed and made a difference between you and others, what would the habit be?
Wow.
And the number one answer was that the truly great learn to hate losing more than they love winning. That winning is, as Kobe was saying there, right? Winning is almost what really successful people kind of expect from themselves. Yep. Losing should hurt. Yep. And too many people make excuses when they lose. Too many people have someone to blame when they lose. It's the surface, it's the referee, it's whatever it is. It's not me. The great ones say, guess what? I got to go get better. And when the best are committed to going and getting better, then it's amazing the distance you can put between yourself and others.
Staying on this Kobe Bryant video, yeah, you can give him a hand on that. That was brilliant. Staying with this Kobe Bryant video, he said that when he started realizing that he wanted to be one of the greats in the world, he said he looked at his ranking. He was 14 years old. He looked at his ranking. He said, I wasn't even really on the chart. He said, I was number 64. And I went, well, I never was in the top 100. So I don't know what you mean, not on the chart. He said, I was number 64. He said, but what I decided to do is I listed the top 63 and I made a art of studying them to find out why they were ahead of me. He said, and then all year long, I began to check them off. I'm better than him on that. I'm better than him on that. I'm better than him on that. And he said, I worked myself all the way down to the top 5 by checking people off because of what they were good at that I wasn't good at yet. Now, staying with that, there's this, John Maxwell talks about getting out of the people pile. And if you haven't watched John talk about that lately, his dancing is one thing. Him getting out of the people pile is a whole nother level. We'll have to get him to do that on the podcast sometime, on video, by the way. That'll bring a lot of YouTube viewers. So getting out of this people pile a lot of times is this remarkable competitive spirit. So you've studied some of the greatest, most accomplished competitors in the world. What do you see and what have you learned regarding competition in these great leaders?
That they run toward it. You know, we hear that a lot about first responders, and the great ones are the ones that run toward, right? And then Kyle Carpenter, the people who are willing to dive on the grenade, you know, to save the person next to them. The people that run toward, the great competitors want to run into the competition, right? Yeah. They're not looking to sit on the bench. They're not looking for that moment when, they're not hoping that you don't ask them to take the shot. The great ones want to be in the mix. And I think that was really educational for me, because there are times in life when you just don't feel it, right? And the great ones don't have a day when not feeling it is their reason to not want to be in the fray. Yeah. So I love that, right? I love that. That's what Kobe was running toward it, right? He was running toward the 63 ahead of him. Michael Jordan, we'll throw a little Michael in here. Michael is the most competitive human I've ever met in my life. I've never, if it's tiddlywinks, that guy is he's trying to figure out how to beat you at it. But it's the great ones are always looking for a way to run toward an opportunity to measure themselves. And they often find themselves in measuring, you know, and for Michael, one of the challenges for Michael and Kobe and something is that after a while, it gets to a place where you almost don't feel there's anybody you can measure yourself against. And so then you have to measure yourself against you. And that's it's the daily improvement, right? It's that daily improvement.
So you've told me a story, and I'm putting you on the spot, in Chicago on a podcast. I can fix this post edit. So we got it. Can you tell that story of Michael Jordan and you and competitor?
I mean, really, do I have to?
Come on.
So Michael Jordan does an old man basketball camp. He invites 100 old guys. It's an amazing collection. The only thing the 100 of us have in common is that we love to play basketball. I love basketball so much. I live in Florida. I have a full basketball court at my house, right? I love the game. And guys play there several nights a week. It's an awesome way, if you're old like me, to get your energy out. And Jordan invites 100 guys, divides us into teams of 10, brings in great coaches. And then over the course of several days, you'll play against each other for a championship. Well, Jordan, on the third day, he picks 20 guys and says, today you're going to get the opportunity to go one-on-one with the greatest player of all time. How awesome is that, right, Jordan, to be able to call yourself greatest of all time? And he walks through, picks 20 guys out. I happen to be one of the 20. He says, by the way, the rules are very simple. In fact, so simple, let my assistant explain them. His assistant steps up and she says, yes, the rules are simple. Today, you're going to play a game to one. First guy to score wins, right? Game to one, first guy to score wins. But Michael Jordan is going to start with the ball. Your job is to guard Michael, she says. She even does the air quotes, right? And if Jordan doesn't score, you get the ball. Michael Jordan guards you. First guy to score wins. So Jordan steps up and says, while you're thinking about this, I want you to know I've done this little competition for 9 years, and in 9 years, 5 guys have ever scored on me. And today, there's not going to be a 6th. If he needs the help, he's in your head, right? Well, 2 guys in front of me, the guy walks up, he goes to guard Michael Jordan, right? He goes to throw his elbow in Jordan's chest, but he only didn't get to his hip because he's not that tall. And Jordan then takes the ball, he ball swipes the guy falls backwards. Jordan, 1 dribble, 2 steps, thunder dunk, pulls the ball out of the net. And as he walks by, our fallen colleague, Jordan, chucks the ball on him. And he says, now you know what it's like to be spanked like a bad child. Right? Greatest trash talker in the history, I'm telling you. History of the game, Michael Jordan, greatest trash talker. 2 guys later comes me, and I decide when I go out there, I'm going to step back and dare Michael Jordan to take a shot from the outside. And there's a picture that we show sometimes when I tell him the story. Michael Jordan's got the ball in his left hand with his right hand. He's calling me out. And he looks at me and he goes, are you really going to give me this shot? And I looked back at Michael and I said, I don't think you have it in you. 100 old guys start laughing, right? Jordan then shakes his head, goes up, takes his shot, and misses. Ball goes wide left. I got the rebound, took it back outside the three-point line, and Jordan steps out to guard me. And as he's stepping out, I look back and I said, Michael, aren't you going to return the favor? And he said, I know you don't have that shot in you, right? And as Jordan stepped up, I stepped back, and from 26 feet, became the sixth player to ever score on Michael Jordan. And I'm sorry I was forced to tell that story one more time today. But I do when I see Jordan these days at different events, he always says, "You still telling that story?" Every day, Michael, I tell it every day. If someone gives me an open door, I tell that story.
It's my fault,
sorry,
Michael Jordan.
post-edit.
It's my fault. It's my fault.
Yeah.
My question for you is this. As you carry the weight of this enterprise and as a leader in John's legacy, what is the number one challenge that you deal with internally that you're facing when it comes to focusing on the future? Well, I was sitting there listening to you, and I was like, man, all of this is yes, yes, yes. But I know the weight that you carry. I know the leaders that are listening right now carry a weight maybe bigger than the one that we do. Maybe it's not, but it's not all rose-colored glasses, right? And so I want you to think about that. And I want you just kind of to talk to our listeners about what is the number one challenge that you face, that you deal with on a daily basis as a leader, and then how you're working through that. Before you give us that answer and wrap up, here's what I was thinking about from an organization standpoint. Leaders, as you focus on the future, it doesn't happen by accident. We talked a lot about you've got to honor the purpose and the culture, but change has to happen. It's moving at a fast pace. We're change agents. My encouragement to you is make sure you know what I call the organizational change capacity. We call it your change power. And you've got to be able to make changes for the future as you focus on it at the pace of which your team and organization can handle. Because if you don't, it may all implode on you and there may be no future. And so I just want to encourage you to think about that. It's a complex discussion today around this future. So Mark, take it away, wrap up, and talk a little bit about what your number one challenge is when you face this focusing on the future for us as an enterprise.
So it goes to, thank you for that question, Chris. And I really want to process this in a way that it's helpful for our podcast listeners. John made a point, and I do hope, podcast listeners, that you go to the bonus resource that we give you and download the notes and then share those with others. But in the notes, for those of you watching on YouTube, here they are right in front of me and Chris as we teach. John's fourth point says, until you believe in yourself, you won't believe in your future. Now you got to understand, John Maxwell for years has said, I'm the best second man he's ever had. And then it felt like he just put a piece of dynamite under my rear end and propelled me to first man while he's still in the game with me.
Sitting on the front row.
Sitting on the front row. Sometimes sitting on the stage right beside me telling me, I had a comment the other day on social media. It was actually on John's social media, calling me out for being arrogant and assuming that I should be the one carrying John's baton, and saying that how they were completely turned off, and of all the leadership decisions they've ever seen John make, the decision to hand the baton to me was his worst ever. And that was a comment on social media. And I got that and I went, I kind of agree with the guy. How could John, who's the smartest leader in the world, pick me? And I've commented back to the person. In fact, I need to go on social media. He's probably commented back to me now. I commented back and I said, I completely see your point. Because Chris, going back to your question on my greatest challenge as a visionary, it's keeping the humility, yet having the confidence that we can build a bigger, better, more brilliant future. Now, in some ways, that feels like one of the most asinine things I could say. One of the most arrogant things I can say, that John Maxwell, who has written 86 books, 34 million copies and counting sold, impacted millions of people with his nonprofit and for-profit efforts, could have some kid that talks as Southern as me come in and cast a vision of a bigger, better, more brilliant future. There are sometimes, Chris, that I say that and I go, Mark Cole, what are you saying? And what have you been drinking? And were you smoking something at the same time? Yet to really be believable, there has got to be a certainty in a leader that we can lead to bigger, better, brighter things. And to do that, when I've been the second man from one of the greatest leaders the world will ever see, is one of the greatest challenges I have, is that symbiotic relationship between humility of who am I and confidence that I'm supposed to be the man, the leader to take us to the next level. And that would be the greatest challenge. And the days that I don't do well with that challenge is the days when I focus on the past accomplishments of John and myself and our team. And the days that I'm doing better about that are the days that I'm looking forward and saying, we really can be better. We really can get there. This is believable. I can do it. And not to be too distracted with people that thinks that optimism of the future is nothing more than arrogance of someone really challenged or someone really not capable or equipped to do what John Maxwell has asked me.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.